The most famous athlete on earth doesn't sleep through the night on purpose. And when you hear how deep this rabbit hole actually goes, you're going to realize that what elite players do in 2026 is almost nothing like what you've been told. So today, we're ranking the 10 habits that actually separate elite players from everyone else right now. Not the generic stuff like eat clean and sleep 8 hours. The real habits, some of them so counterintuitive, they almost sound made up. I've gone through the research, the coaches, the sports scientists, and a few details that almost never get covered. By the end of this, you're going to look at professional football completely differently. Let's start at number 10. Before a World Cup game, elite teams reset their body clocks days before the plane even takes off. This is called pre-adaptation, and the idea is pretty simple. Instead of landing in a new time zone and hoping your body adjusts, you start shifting your sleep schedule 1 to 2 hours toward the destination time zone in the 3 nights before you fly. You also manage your light exposure carefully, because light is the main signal your brain uses to set its internal clock. Some teams add low-dose melatonin on top of that. Done right, this can cut adaptation time by a full day or 2. Here's the honest twist for 2026, though. Most teams at the World Cup won't be crossing more than 3 time zones, so classic jet lag isn't actually the biggest enemy. The real problem is travel fatigue over massive distances combined with the heat. But the habit of managing your body clock proactively before stress hits you, that principle applies way beyond football. Coming in at number 9, top players build muscle with near-empty weights by cutting off their own blood flow. This is called blood flow restriction training, or BFR, and it sounds almost absurd until you understand what's happening. A cuff gets wrapped around the limb, which restricts blood from leaving the muscle while you do very light resistance work. Your body responds to the metabolic stress as if you just lifted something heavy. Growth hormone spikes. Muscle-building signals fire. But your joints and cardiovascular system barely feel it. For a player coming back from injury who can't load their knees or ankles heavily, this is massive. You're getting the anabolic response of hard training without the physical risk. It's one of the main reasons elite players now return from injuries faster than they did 10 years ago. Number 8 is where things get really specific and really uncomfortable if you've ever missed a penalty. The difference between scoring and choking can literally be 1 single second after the whistle. Researcher Gare Jordet studied 718 penalty kicks across nearly 50 years of data and found that players who run up immediately after the whistle score under 60% of the time. Players who take a balanced, deliberate pause before walking up score around 80%. That's a massive gap for 1 second of composure. The most brutal example of this is Rashford at the Euro 2020 final. The gap between the whistle and his run-up was 11 seconds, the longest of any male player in the entire dataset. His previous average before that kick was 5.7 seconds, and every single one of those had gone in. There's also a fascinating team dynamic here. When a player scores and immediately celebrates with arms raised, the next opponent becomes 2 to 3 times more likely to miss. Elite teams now actually coach this behavior deliberately. Celebrating isn't just emotion, it's psychological warfare. Number 7. Rooney asked what color socks he'd wear so his brain could remember scoring before kickoff. Before every match, Rooney would call the kit man and ask exactly what they'd be wearing. Red shirt, white shorts, white or black socks, and then he'd lie in bed and visualize himself scoring in that exact kit. The reason the detail matters is that the more specific the mental image, the more your brain processes it like a real memory. A vague visualization of scoring a goal is one thing. A detailed, sensory-rich image of the exact kit, the exact stadium, the exact moment. That's your brain essentially rehearsing the experience before it happens. This isn't superstition. It's mental rehearsal, and the research behind it is solid. The brain doesn't fully distinguish between a vividly imagined action and a real one when it comes to building neural pathways. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Number 6 takes this idea of mental preparation and makes it something you can literally count in real time. The best players in history check over their shoulder almost once per second, and you can actually measure it. Jorda's research quantifies how often players scan in the 10 seconds before receiving the ball. Xavi averaged 0.83 scans per second. Fabregas, 0.76. Gundogan, 0.66. Lampard, 0.622. Arsène Wenger put it simply. Very good players scan 6 to 8 times in 10 seconds. Average players only 3 or 4. That's the difference between receiving the ball knowing exactly where everyone is versus receiving it blind and having to figure it out under pressure. And then there's Messi, who does something even more deliberate. He spends the first few minutes of a match just walking and scanning each opponent, studying their positioning and body language before he really engages. He has never scored in the first 2 minutes of a match. That's not a coincidence. He's gathering information first. Now we're getting into the top 5, and this is where it gets genuinely surprising. Elite players now do reps for their brain, and it nearly halved their passing errors. After just 3 hours of 3D multiple object tracking training using a tool called NeuroTracker, soccer players' passing error rate dropped from 47% to 28%. That's not a small improvement. That's almost cutting errors in half from a few hours of brain training. The other piece of this is something called brain endurance training, where mentally fatiguing cognitive tasks are layered on top of normal physical sessions. The idea is to train your decision-making and technical skills while your brain is already tired, which is exactly the state you're in during the final 20 minutes of a match when most mistakes happen. Some teams also use strobe glasses during training, lenses that flicker on and off to force your visual system to process faster and improve anticipation. 5 years ago, this stuff sounded experimental. In 2026, it's standard for top clubs. Number 4 is almost never talked about, and it's one of the most 2026 specific habits on this list. At the World Cup in 2026, the warm-up is about getting cold. During a match, elite players can reach a core body temperature of 40 degrees Celsius or higher. The habit of pre-cooling, deliberately lowering your core temperature before kickoff, extends the time before heat starts degrading your performance and becomes a genuine health risk. Cold water immersion is the most effective method, but there's also new kit technology borrowed directly from Formula One. Adidas developed a ClimaCool system, a vest and jacket that can cut core temperature by up to half a degree Celsius and skin temperature by up to 13 degrees. And for the first time ever at a World Cup, FIFA has mandated cooling breaks in each half. The fact that it's now a rule tells you everything about how seriously the science is being taken. Number 3. Son wasn't allowed to shoot a ball until he was 15, and that's exactly why he can finish with both feet. Son's father, himself a former professional, banned competitive matches entirely until Son was 15. But it went further than that. Before 15, his kids weren't even allowed to shoot, because he believed shooting puts too much stress on ligaments and joints before the body is fully developed. Instead, it was 2 hours a day of ball juggling and close-control dribbling drills. Deliberately, 2 hours, not more, because other Korean academies were running sessions up to 8 hours and burning kids out. The result of all that foundation work, no competitive pressure, no shooting, just pure technical development, is that Son became perfectly two-footed in a way that almost no professional player is. That wasn't an accident. It was a very specific, very deliberate philosophy applied over years. Number 2. One of the greatest strikers ever eats cake first. And there's a reason. Lewandowski eats dessert before his main course. Brownie first, then rice or buckwheat, then meat or fish, then salad or soup. The logic behind it is that sweet foods digest faster, and if they're eaten last and sit on top of protein in the stomach, digestion becomes slower and more difficult. By eating sweets first on an empty stomach, they process quickly and cleanly. He also cuts lactose and wheat flour entirely. This whole system was introduced by his wife Anna, a former karate champion who now specializes in fitness and nutrition. It sounds like a quirk, but it's actually a carefully reasoned dietary structure that Lewandowski credits as a major part of why he's still performing at the highest level well into his mid-30s. And the number one habit, the one that changes how you think about recovery entirely, is this. The most famous athlete on earth doesn't sleep through the night, and it's on purpose. Ronaldo's sleep coach Nick Littlehales uses what he calls the R90 method. Instead of one 8-hour block, the goal is to complete 90-minute sleep cycles, because that's how long a full cycle of light sleep, deep sleep, and REM takes. Ronaldo experimented with 5 90-minute sessions spread across the day, totaling about 7.5 hours, rather than one overnight stretch. Fresh sheets for each session, sleeping in the fetal position, no screens for 90 minutes before sleep. Here's the honest twist, though. Littlehales himself has called the 5 naps a day version misleading, almost fake news. The actual point isn't to wake up every 90 minutes. It's to structure your sleep so you're completing full cycles rather than cutting them off midway, which is what an alarm clock does to most people. The myth versus reality angle is actually what makes this so interesting, because the core principle, respect the cycle, not the clock, is something anyone can apply. So, to recap, pre-adapting your body clock before you travel, building muscle by restricting blood flow, the 1-second pause that separates penalty heroes from penalty nightmares, visualizing in specific detail before the game, scanning almost once per second to see what others don't, training your brain like a muscle, getting cold before kickoff, building technical foundations before ever shooting, eating dessert first, and sleeping in 90-minute cycles instead of one block. At the start of this video, you probably thought elite habits were about discipline and early mornings. What they're actually about is precision. Tiny, specific, evidence-based decisions that compound over time. That's the real edge in 2026. If you want to go deeper on any of these, the sleep science, the penalty psychology, the brain training, drop a comment on which one you want a full breakdown of, because some of these genuinely deserve their own video. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because we go this deep on every topic we cover. There's a related video right here that I think you're going to enjoy just as much as this one.